Those of you who are here and those of you who are watching this on video, it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to introduce you to a remarkable person, an extraordinarily interesting idea. My name is Mark Juergensmeyer. I'm from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and I'm here at CMC as a visiting professor in religious studies, teaching a class on religion and global conflict and conflict resolution. And it's a class I've taught for many years at the University of California, both at Berkeley and Santa Barbara. And for the last 15 years, probably, Josef, has been that long that I found out about you, and I found out about this amazing idea of an Israel-Palestine Confederation that you're going to hear more about today. At the time, only a few people were interested, but boy, has it picked up steam, especially in the last year, since the horrible events of October 7th of last year. Now, Josef Avesar, whom you soon will meet, comes from an Iraqi Jewish family, and his father emigrated to Israel, and so Josef was born and raised in Israel. And then he became a lawyer, and as a lawyer, he was used to solving problems. And he looked around and said, there's a really big problem here that nobody's solved. That is, how can Israel and Palestinians get along together? He says, I'm going to take a stab at that. So he came up with a remarkable idea. I mean, it's something like the EU, where, the EU doesn't supplant the governments of Germany or France or whatever. So the real exciting part of this idea is it doesn't need to change anything at all right now. In fact, you could begin implementing it tomorrow. It doesn't take a huge change in the superstructure. It requires the vision and the willingness to act as if there is a common concern for the whole of the region, that Israelis and Palestinians, whether they're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Druze, whatever, have a common interest in nurturing that common area of which they are citizens and are part of that community. The governments can continue the way they are and governing the way they are, but there is also then this third entity of the Confederation that deals with issues that concern everybody: education, healthcare, transportation. You can start thinking of all of the things that concern everybody. So it's an amazing idea. So it's no surprise now it has copycats. Just learned about a group called A Land for All that's basically taken your idea, and there are many others, because it's become now a sensible alternative to the problematic issues of whether to have a two-state or a one-state solution and what that would look like and how you would do that. But here's an idea: you don't need to do anything. You could just start doing it tomorrow. So I've said enough. I want you all to meet Josef Avesar and hear more about the Israel-Palestine Confederation.
Thank you, Mark. Mark and I became very good friends. We know each other now for many years, and I think we think alike, and I am very, very appreciative of the fact that he's inviting me again and again and again to do simulations in front of his class. And I enjoyed those simulations, and I think that they will eventually lead to the creation of a federal government in Israel-Palestine. That's what we are aiming for. A little bit about my background. My name is Josef Avesar. In Hebrew, my name is Yossi or Yosef, which was translated when I got my Israeli passport. They said, well, your name is now in English Joseph. So since then, I'm Joseph. And I was born in Israel. My mother was born in Baghdad, Iraq. My father was born in Basra, Iraq. And they immigrated to Palestine in 1936, together, before the creation of the State of Israel. My older brother was a month old, I think, when they immigrated. He still is alive. He's 18 years older than me, and he lives in Arizona. And just like any other Israeli, when you are born in Israel to an Israeli Jewish family, by default you are a Zionist. You just think that the Jews should deserve to have their own country in the state of Israel. That's how I thought too. Until maybe 25 years ago, my views changed. And I started to realize that Zionism is not the solution for the Jewish people. I think that the solution for the Jewish people is having peace with the Palestinians. I started to realize that the Palestinians are exactly like us. My parents spoke Arabic between themselves. My mother hardly spoke Hebrew. She spoke Arabic with her sisters, with her brother, with her parents. I had to translate for her as a kid. And my father spoke Arabic to his family. And I started to look and see, well, what is really the difference? Why are we fighting each other? My sister was saved from sure drowning in the middle of the night in the Mediterranean Sea when she was 16 by a Palestinian fisherman. So why are we enemies? We look the same. You look at me and you say, well, he's probably Arab or Palestinian or whatever. So are all my families. Why are we fighting each other? Why are we enemies? And I became a lawyer. I studied international law at UCLA, and then I became a lawyer. And I studied the US Constitution. I had a terrific constitutional law professor. And of all the subjects that I enjoyed, and I enjoyed many, I enjoyed being a lawyer. I am still a lawyer. I enjoyed being a lawyer. But constitutional law made the most sense for me, because it gave me the idea that in order to be able to live in peace, you have to have a transparent system, a system where everyone is equal, where everybody knows the rules, that everybody knows what to expect as part of the political system. You cannot change the rules in the middle of the game. Just not fair. You cannot have someone who is superior to others change the rules in the middle of the game. You need to have rules the same rules for everyone, regardless of religion, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of what you look like or the language you speak. We need to have a trust in the system. If we do not trust the system and we do not feel that we are equal and the system protects us, then we become the enemy of the system, and we are starting to be divided between each other and not like each other, because some of us are benefiting from the corrupt system. So we don't want to have a corrupt system to begin with. We want to have a fair system for everyone. Israel does not have a constitution. The reason Israel does not have a constitution, because you can't have a constitution for a Jewish state. If you say that you are a democracy, then you have to state in the Constitution that everyone is equal. You have to state that everyone is entitled to due process, that the property and the life of everyone is equal, and everyone is entitled to equal justice. And you cannot have that where in a Jewish state where Jews and Palestinians and the non-Jews live together. unless you truly want to have a democracy. So a Jewish state cannot be a democracy. And therefore, a Jewish state cannot live in peace. Because there are Palestinians and Israelis living together. And no matter how much you try, they're not going to accept a system that one side is benefiting from the rule of law and the other is not. That the other, one side is recognized as superior than another. Just can't do that. So I came to the conclusion that the idea of a Jewish state of Zionism, as much as it hurts me to say that, because like I said, I was born a Zionist. I was born to a Jewish family. In reality, I made almost my entire family not liking me because I looked at what's going on and I said, you know, what's fair is fair. You have to call it by what it is. Now, I also realized that the Jews in Israel will not give up on the idea of a Jewish state. They will not give up on the idea that they deserve a country, mostly because of the Holocaust. So for them, the idea of abandoning the concept of a Jewish state is problematic, to say the least. And it was for me too. When I came to the realization that we need to have total equality, it created internal conflict for myself. Am I betraying my own people? And from their perspective, and from my own previous perspective, yes. But do my own people, do they have a chance of living in peace? Are they secured by the system that they created? And the answer is no, they are not. So, to make a long story short, what is the compromise? And the compromise that I came up with, and my organization, the Israeli-Palestine Confederation, came with, said, fine, the Israelis will have their government, Palestinians will have their government. Whatever system of government they want, you can change it, regardless of whether you agree with it or not. My opinion, I don't. I don't agree with the Israeli government or the Israeli system or the Palestinian system, but I agree that it is a reality. That if you speak against it, you become their enemy, and you're not going to achieve anything. But what is possible is to create a common federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine that will be independent and separate from the Israeli and the Palestinian government, that will be created by the people of Israel and Palestine together. Those people that realize that the concept that they had before fails them. Those people that are truly concerned about their children going to war year after year and after year, that are truly concerned about violence, those people that have their babies about to grow up to become soldiers or become fighters, those people that realize that the system that they live in is wrong, but they cannot articulate or are being afraid of rejecting the system. So what we are proposing is the Israelis continue to have their government, their system. The Palestinians will continue to have their government and their system. It also gives them security. Although, in my opinion, their governments are not giving them security, but in their mind, they want to keep their governments to feel secure. Fine. But let's create a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine together as a third entity created by those reasonable Israelis and reasonable Palestinians who will be voting. And now that we have the internet, we can actually do the voting online. So what we are proposing is the creation of a third independent and separate, and I underline those words, independent and separate, which means it's not going to be created by the Israeli government or the Palestinian government. It will be created by the people of Israel and Palestine who are reasonable, who are tired of their governments. And in the Constitution, we stated that there will be 300 parliamentary districts in the entire area that includes Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel, where 14.5 million reside, 14.5 million people reside. And the 300 parliamentary district will elect 300 parliament members. Some of the districts will be exclusively Palestinian population because, for example, in Gaza, there are no Israelis living in Gaza. There are no Jews living in Gaza. Some of the district will be Jewish Israeli only, like in Tel Aviv, like the city where I was born. I was born in that area of Tel Aviv, actually in a small city, or now became a bigger city called Ramat Gan, but doesn't matter. So 300 parliamentary districts will elect 300 parliament members. Now, these elections could be done online. Each district will elect one person. A Palestinian could vote for an Israeli, Israeli could vote for a Palestinian. We will also have an executive branch of that federal government with a Palestinian and Israeli. One person, whoever gets the most vote, will be president. Whoever gets the second amount of vote will be vice president, as long as he's or she of the other nationality. And we will also have a judicial branch with Israeli and Palestinian judges on all levels of jurisdiction. And in order for the parliament to pass legislation, you will need 55% of the Palestinian parliament members and 55% of the Israeli parliament members agreeing on the same legislation. And so the federal government will have a totally different perspective on the area. It's not an Israeli government, it's not a Palestinian government. It doesn't have to accommodate the Israeli nationalistic or the Palestinian nationalistic views. It will be a view of the entire nation. The president will not be the president of Israel or Palestine. He will be the president of Israel-Palestine, whatever they want to call it. Now, we do not advocate and we do not suggest any policies for that federal government. We are saying the 300 parliament members will decide each and every issue, and if that issue violates, or that legislation that they pass violates the sovereignty of the Israeli government or the Palestinian government, those governments will have a veto power over that legislation. Now, you say to me, well, Joseph, they're going to veto everything. Well, if we are able to have substantial amount of support from the people of Israel and Palestine by way of votes, if we are able to have 300 parliament members elected, all swearing allegiance to a common constitution and abandoning their allegiance to their government, but swearing allegiance, Israelis and Palestinians together, that will be a momentous occasion in the history of humanity when it comes to Israel and Palestine. the 300 parliament members will have tremendous political power, and if they pass legislation that benefits the people of Israel and Palestine, that government, the parliament, and the president will have huge political power to put pressure on whoever wants to veto the legislation. But not only pressure on the Israeli and the Palestinian government, but also on all governments of the world, including the American government, that is not really, did not come up with a system of peace for Israel and Palestine. The American government is a federal government. It believes in a constitution. It believes in separation between religion and government. It believes in equality. It finds discrimination based on religion or ethnicity and anathema. But yet, when it comes to Israel-Palestine, they support a government that is based on religion, that does not have a constitution, does not have separation between church and state. So, if we are able, and I say if, but I think when we are able to elect a federal government in Israel-Palestine, no government in the world, including the Israeli or the Palestinians, will be able to oppose this government, because that government will be able to pass legislation that is beneficial to the people of Israel and Palestine to give peace. And I'm sure you all know, they don't have peace. They have violence. So the federal government will be able to do things for the people of Israel and Palestine that the Israeli or the Palestinian government will not be able to do, are not able to do. And it's time. The only vision for Israel-Palestine is peace. It's not victory. There is no victory. We are people, children, mothers, fathers, grandparents living. There is no victory in that reality. So let me open up for questions, and I guess Mark said that you're all welcome. We are actually doing a simulation today on how this federal government will be functioning. So, any questions? Yes, hi.
Let me tell you where that's going to be. In my class, and we have a little room in the back of the class if you want to join us at 2:30 in Bower 1. It's at 2:30 in Bower 1. It's in kind of the lowest floors right next to the ROTC, if you know where that is. Anyway, at 2:30, if you want to come and join us, you're welcome to do so. So questions for Avesar? All right, a whole bunch. You want to handle this?
Yeah, because we're a small group here, I'll actually take the mic around if that works. So please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Owiana. I'm a freshman at CMC. Thank you for your talk. I was wondering how the extreme polarization abroad with the protests occurring and maybe like very complicated rhetoric being thrown around affects this solution at all, affects how the US could potentially be involved in it. Thank you.
I'm trying to understand. You're saying how would the different groups in around the world, how would they affect this kind of?
How did the university protests and the perception of not just Zionism, but Hamas and the different groups and what people are saying abroad, do you think it does affect this? And if so, how?
I think that the protest around the world eventually will have to face the question, what is the future? What is the future? If we are able to create a federal government, on both sides, not only the protest, but regular people who take side, they will have to face that question. What is the real solution to this? Are you going to throw all the Jews into the ocean, 7 million? Are you going to put them on a plane? Are you going to throw all the Palestinians into the ocean? What is the responsible future? What is the responsible vision for that area? And so I think that, so if you ask me, how would that become a reality? How would the federal government become a reality? The difference between us now and the federal government being created, in my opinion, is $100 million. Now, I'm not here to ask for money. I am here to create awareness that there is another possibility. If we have that awareness, then money is not an issue. The money will help us advertise the benefit of the federal government. The money will help us advertise the failure of the existing system, and the money will help us create a platform for an election, for people to run, and for people to vote. And it's not a lot of money. Do you know how much money is being spent on the war between Israel and... When I last checked, like several months ago, it was $3 billion a week. Now it went up substantially because the war expanded substantially. So $100 million is a drop in the bucket. And it will give more security to the people of Israel and Palestine than all these wars that are going on. So I hope I answered the question, your question. All right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Eli. I am a sophomore here. I found it fascinating, your idea for the future of the region. But my question involves taking a step back from that, thinking about short term. Right now, the power brokers in the region are Benjamin Netanyahu and whoever's replacing Yahya Sinwar. Those people, both of them, and their respective coalitions are not going to be very open anytime soon, given the circumstances, to any sort of one state, two state, whatever solution where there's parliament of, you said you called it Israel-Palestine, presumably with a hyphen, anything like that. We all are very educated students here, right? You are a very educated speaker like that. The circumstances right now just do not allow for that. So I guess my question for you is, what do you foresee happening with Benjamin Netanyahu and his government and the Hamas government? And I know the PLO is there, but that will somehow change these circumstances so that anything resembling what you're talking about is possible. I'm a little bit lost on that.
Your introduction was a little different than the ending, but are you really asking, will they allow this to happen? Or are you asking me to predict the future when these governments are in existence?
No, sir. I'm asking you why you think this is possible given the current circumstances.
I think that it is possible because of the current circumstances. What do you see? We see violence. We see no vision for peace. We see no vision for security. We see more wars and more killing of people. So you're saying, well, if the patient is in such a terrible shape, why do you think that he should be healthy? And I am saying he should be healthy because he is in a terrible shape. All right. Look, what we are proposing, when I underline the word independent and separate, I am saying that it is possible to create a federal government regardless of Netanyahu, regardless of Yahya Sinwar, who's no longer alive, regardless of any governments, because the people of Israel and Palestine, they own their lives. They are not prisoners. When democracy was introduced, the same question was asked. Why do you think democracy is possible when the emperor, the king, has all the horses, all the soldiers, and the weapons to prevent us from creating a democracy. Well, that's what we need to do, regardless of the emperor, regardless of the horses that he has and the soldiers that he has, because our lives is more important than the continuation of this violence. And if we are able to introduce this idea, and if we are able to accept the idea that peace is more important than ideology that brought us the opposite of peace, then there is no stopping us.
You're saying there could be a popular movement online. The hell with Netanyahu, just go ahead and do it.
Exactly. Exactly. And it doesn't have to be online only, but it could be. We have now tools that we didn't have before. Yes, go
Hi,
ahead.
my name is Annie Bernstein. I'm a sophomore at CMC. I guess to expand on Eli's question, as a Zionist myself, after October 7th, finding out that a close friend of mine was taken hostage to Gaza by Hamas and is still there, knowing the violence that occurred at the Nova Festival, understanding the fact that when I was 17, I participated in a peace program with Israelis and Palestinians from the West Bank, and knowing that every single Palestinian from that program told me that my friend, who is also, or was their friend, deserved to get raped and taken to Gaza. That just shows me that there's not really a peace camp on that side. And I just spent my summer in Israel, and there doesn't really seem to be a peace camp there either. It's extremely polarized, and I think the people themselves are not willing to trust one another. And I personally would never trust a Palestinian outside of Israel again. So for someone like me, or like most Israelis and most Palestinians who really fundamentally hate each other at the moment, and I think for the foreseeable future, how do you think that the people could rise up and create this federal government when the people themselves, they hate each other? And it doesn't even have anything to do with Bibi or with Hamas or the PLO. You're suggesting that it's the people's place to put this together. So how does that work when they really don't want to work together?
Well, I agree with you that there is very little trust. But trust, you may be shocked by what I'm about to say. In order to create a democracy, you don't really need trust. You do it despite the trust. In fact, if you truly want to have peace, then you create a system of transparency. In other words, a system where you actually suspect the other side. But if you have the desire to be safe, then you say, okay, we have the desire to be safe. You have the desire to be safe. We do not trust each other. Fair enough. But let's create a system, and that's the Constitution, where we both have to play by the rules, not by trust, but by the rules that we agreed upon. If we have a Constitution that we agreed upon, and the Constitution is already written, we do simulations on this issue time and time again. Both Palestinians and Israelis are willing to accept the Constitution. Why? Because the Constitution doesn't speak about anything, any substantive policy. It's about democracy. It's about the people of Israel and Palestine sitting together, as much as they hate each other, and being responsible based on the rules that they agreed upon, which is the Constitution. Now, not all Israelis and all Palestinians do not trust each other. Not all Israelis trust each other. I mean, I'm sure you saw all the billboards that called Bibi criminal. You saw the demonstrations against each other in Israel. because they said that they kidnapped the government, that the government's one side over another. They don't trust each other. The Palestinians do not trust each other. The Palestinians and the Israelis do not trust each other. In fact, there are many Palestinians, not a lot, I agree, many Palestinians and Israelis who have a lot more in common with each other. But the system that we are proposing has nothing to do with trust. It has to do with transparency, with the Constitution. So, I'll give you an example. I like to play table tennis, okay? When we play, we know the rules. Now, if someone comes and punches me, he can win the game, but I'll walk away. We have to play by the rules. The rules are known to all of us. So we don't play because we trust each other. We play and we are being honest with each other because we know what the rules are. And if someone violates the rules, then the game is over. The same with democracy. The same with when you have a common constitution. Yes? Did you have a follow-up question? Okay.
Thank you. I was going to ask, on that note, I guess I had kind of two questions, but I'll start off with one regarding your assertion that Israel, as a Jewish state, couldn't be a democracy. There was a referendum in Moldova yesterday on the EU, which defines itself as being a Romanian state. There will be an election in Japan in a number of weeks, which defines itself as being a Japanese state. And the majority of the countries in this world do define themselves in some sort of a similar manner that are democracies. Do you believe that all of these are illegitimate because they used such a definition in their national identity?
I think I understood the gist of your question. You cannot have a Jewish democracy. Just cannot have. It's an oxymoron. A democracy is about separation between church and state. It's about the people that are chosen to be in the parliament, chosen because of their merits, because of who they are and what they about to do, what you believe they're about to do.
So you mean in the Jewish in the religious sense rather than the ethnic sense when you're saying you can't have a Jewish democracy?
You cannot have any ethno democracy. You cannot, the democracy has to be separate from religion. That's the essence of democracy, is a separation between government and religion. The moment you integrate government and religion, then you have outside religious forces that are not elected, that are taking over the government, and there is no transparency anymore. So if you want to have democracy, then you have to have the people that are being elected responsible independently and separately from outside hidden agenda.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Nico, and I'm a sophomore at CMC. Thank you for your talk and for sharing your experience. I had a question about the role of, I would say, outsiders, people who aren't Israeli or Palestinian. So it seems for you, through what you shared, that the realization that Zionism wasn't the path forward for the Jewish people was largely, that was some work you had, that was for yourself, that was something you had to realize, not something you were more convinced of. So I was wondering, what paths do you even take in trying to convince other Jewish people of that same fact, especially when you said that there's members of your own family who have kind of
Similarity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for that.
It's very easy. You look at the reality. The reality is that a Jewish state has not been safe for the Jews. You have people that are generations, grandfathers, fathers, sons, and grandchildren serving in the same military unit You have generations of people in Israel and in Palestine that are being killed, and there is no peace. So the first reality is, what did your government give you in terms of what you mostly need, which is security, peace? You don't, that's the first thing. And the Israeli and the Palestinian governments failed to give peace to the people. Then they go, okay, you're right, but what's the alternative? We don't trust them, just like this student said. We don't trust them. Fine. I understand you don't trust them. There's years of hatred and years of wars that was created by the governments by your governments. So we are not taking away the idea that the Israeli government will be gone. We are saying to the Israeli people, your government remains, your military remains. If that's what you trust, it remains. Same for the Palestinians. But there has to be a system to create peace. If there is no system to create peace, if there is no real vision for peace, then you are unsafe within your own government, within your own system. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you for your talk. I'm Lisa. I teach in the history department here. I've been here for a long time. I'm wondering whether you imagine the UN would recognize this federal government eventually, or whether it's to the side. If the UN recognizes the federal government, would then Palestine also be recognizable by the UN? So I'm just sort of curious about how this would work on the world stage. And then I guess the other question I have is what sort of legislation you imagine being able to be passed?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So to answer your first question, actually, both of your questions, we deal with those issues in our simulations all the time. The first question is, would the federal government be recognized by the United Nations? The answer is yes. Why? Because why not? I mean, this is a government that was elected by the people of Israel and Palestine. It's a democracy. It's for peace. And what country would oppose recognizing this government? What countries of the 7 Security Council would oppose this government, would veto recognition of this government? This government does not call for the annihilation or dismantling of the Israeli or the Palestinian government. It would be very difficult not to recognize it. Regarding the second question, we call it threading the needle. We believe, and we are showing it time and time and again, that a common federal government will be able to thread the needle. What does that mean? That it will pass legislation that will be accepted and neither side will be able to reject. For example, requiring both sides to teach tolerance and understanding to their students and in their public schools, to teach Hebrew and Arabic in their public schools, to teach the exchange of professors and students within their public system. We do that all the time. And in the simulations, we ask a person to be Israeli prime minister and a person to be Palestinian president. And we always ask them, are you going to veto this legislation? And they all go, no, no, no. We are very much in favor of teaching tolerance. Having a common police force that would be managing all the holy sites in Israel-Palestine. So if you want to go and pray, you don't have to go through the Israeli security or the Palestinian security. You go through a common security. Having a joint economic zone between Israel and Gaza that would be managed by the federal government, not by the Palestinians, not by the Israelis, but by the federal government, that both sides will allocate a certain amount of land so they will be able to build an international airport, international seaport that would serve the people of Israel and Palestine together. Having a common passport so that the Palestinians, so if you're a Palestinian, you cannot travel to Europe, or if you're Israeli, cannot travel to Iran or to Saudi Arabia or any other country that is opposed to Israel, well, you can use the common passport to do that. A whole bunch of legislation on that line that would benefit both sides, and neither side would be able to veto in good faith. Yeah, no, they told me ahead of that. All right.
Yes, I know a bunch of folks had to go to class. I'm sorry about that. But those of us who are still here, please join me in thanking Mr. Avesar once more.
All right. Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.